Zoom today, and I'm like, oh, I gotta open my winter clothing.
It's very exciting, you know. I'm from Minnesota, so winter sweaters were a big part of my life.
Yeah, that
I always
looks
look
like a
forward
really
to
good
getting
one.
back into it.
That looks
Yeah,
like
this
a
one's
great sweater.
from Ireland.
Wow.
One of those wool ones.
Oh,
It's nice and warm.
nice.
Thank you.
Hi there. Welcome, everybody.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome.
We're going to spend the next couple of minutes waiting for people to arrive. And in the meantime, if we want to go around popcorn style and introduce ourselves, I'll start. I'm Jen. I use she, her pronoun. And I will be working on my native bee, which is in my bag. So I haven't gotten it out yet. And I will pass it to Joan.
Hi, everybody. I'm she, her, North Hollywood, Tongvaland, and I'm not going to be doing any embroidery or crafts today. I'll be listening and watching tonight. And I'll pass it on. Cynthia.
Hi, I'm Cindy. I go with she, her pronouns, and I'll be working on my little butterfly embroidery tonight. I'm calling in from West Covina, and I'll pass it on to Maria. Or maybe she's not there. Maybe let's go with Ansu.
Hi everyone, I'm Ansu, she, her. I'm calling in from Palms. I am going to start to, not start, but make inches more progress on my native bee. I love doing it and I love to listen. And I'm going to pass it to, let me see who all is here. Oh gosh, how do I see? I don't know. Aaron? No.
I'm actually here. Maria is here.
Maria, there you go. Sorry.
I had my volume off and I didn't know. I'm in Los Angeles and I'll be working on my embroidery of a marigold.
Oh, Maria, you're on mute.
I'll pass it on to Joan if you haven't gone yet.
Oh, actually, I did. Thanks, Maria. How about Aaron? Aaron, I see you.
Hello. My name is Aaron. I'm calling from Los Angeles, working on some Penrose tiles at Metabolic Studio. And I can't see anyone. I'm on a phone, so if someone else could go next that hasn't.
I'll go. I'm Roxanne, she, her, and I'm actually baking for my son's birthday during this, so I'll be baking and listening. And I will pass it to Lexa. Did you go already?
Hello, this is Lexa. He, she, her, she. I'm in Pennsylvania and I'm related to the up in Lincoln Heights. And I'll pass, I can't see anybody on the phone, so somebody just hop in, okay?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm calling in from Metabolic Studio. I'm also working on Penrose tiling tonight. And oh yeah, she, her pronouns. I pass it on to Patricia.
Patricia Watts. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I have missed like the last 3 sessions, so I feel really bad. I was writing, but I'll get back on my bee here. And I'll pass it on to Rowena.
Hi everyone, I'm Rowena. I'm in Los Angeles. I use she, her pronouns. I actually finished my native bee last week. Just here.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Tonight I'll be working on a knitting project. I will pass it to Olan.
Thank you. Hi, I am Olan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm calling from Los Angeles. I am working on a sunflower and butterfly and bee. And I arrived a little late, so Sylvia, have you spoken yet?
No, thank you. I'll go. My name is Sylvia Holmes. I use she, her pronouns. I'm in Pasadena, California, and I'm working on nothing. Finished last week, and I did not get anything in the mail, so I need to put myself in the chat as needing something.
Perfect. We'll send something out to you soon. So at this time, I think most of us have gone, so we'll start. So welcome to the Fires of the West Learning and Native Plant Embroidery Zoom gathering hosted by the Metalbox Studio. Since the last presidential election, Lauren Bond and the Metalbox Studio have held a potluck protest printmaking workshop and community crafting space every Thursday to process collectively the various traumas of this time. With the advent of COVID-19 pandemic, however, we've shifted gears and created this Zoom space to educate ourselves on critical issues by reading and holding discussions while we craft. We spent the first 12 weeks on the Zoom gathering focused on text about prison and police abolition. This current series is dedicated to educating ourselves about the fires of the West with a specific focus on native land management and sovereignty, the history of fire suppression, and how we can decolonize our understanding of fire moving forward to create a safer and more resilient West. Many of you have already received embroidery kits in the mail. In this kit is a line drawing on fabric of a botanical plant representing the food and medicine that Metabolic is currently growing on 2 studio sites along the LA River, up in Pai Hunado, so-called Owens Valley, where Los Angeles steals its water from, and in Vermont as an effort to give away free food to folks in need right now. We drew images of the plants we're growing, transferred the drawings onto fabric, which we sent to you. Along with the embroidery hoop, needles, and a thread, in the kit, you will have also received a self-addressed return envelope with the postage. When you've finished your embroidery, you can use this to mail it back to the Metalbox Studio. These embroideries will eventually be formed into a hybrid object. If you have not yet received your embroidery kit, please send an email to info@metabolicstudio.org, and we will put that address in the chat bar and include your mailing address, and we'll send one out to you in the next week. Tonight, we'll be reading current climate adaptation plan film. I'm sorry, not reading, watching, and listening to an NPR podcast, Managing Wildfire Through Cultural Burning. We've decided to close the entrance to the Zoom space after the first 15 minutes of our program to create a better flow for discussion at the end. For anyone who would like to, I'm sorry, if you'd like to please mute your sound, we'll start the video. Okay, can everybody see that before I?
Yes.
Just give it a thumbs up. Okay, thank you, Roland. And can you hear it? If you just give me a thumbs up.
No.
Have thousands of years of experience adapting to climate change and living with their environment in a sustainable way.
That knowledge was handed down orally by our ancestors to their children to teach their children how to survive in this country.
A lot of young people don't realize all the knowledge that they already have being raised in these places and just, living here and doing the practices that our ancestors have passed down to us.
Oftentimes, tribal people are not paying attention to what's going on in the outside world and all this hair on fire reaction to the climate crisis. But in fact, those very tribal people, by living their daily lives, are actually doing their part to adapt to it and to respond to it.
We have to use our present tools and present knowledge to get back to some past practices that we want to get back to safely without destroying everything. Because catastrophic wildfire is no good for anything, really. It took 100 years to totally wreck up our forest, and it's going to take at least that much to get back to something more diverse and fire resilient.
Climate change is pretty daunting. At the same time, it's really important to know there's a lot of things that people can do. Native people have been talking about all of these issues for a long time. And this is actually really just on a continuum of the struggles that people have had and been the fights that people have been fighting for a very long time.
The connection with nature is how we was able to survive and thrive back in the day before contact. When you rehabilitate our connection as Native people back to the environment, things becomes so much better. When our forests are healthy, our people are healthy.
The next generation that's coming up, they're going to be the ones that they grew up with their ceremonies, they grew up with their language, they grew up with having more control over their lands and stuff. And they're going to be the ones that have to bring it to the rest of the world. The world needs what we feel that we fought really hard to keep.
The colonization and regulations, those things weren't allowing people to brush the way they want to, burn the way they want to, gather the way they want to. The ability to go to your places and manage or pray or gather and do the things that as a tribal family have been doing for a long time. Through these years and these processes of colonization, a lot of that was taken away.
Our forests have been really suppressed of fire. The use of fire, us Native Indigenous people have always used since time immemorial. And that was disrupted. We put fire in the landscape to help everything around us, not just us, but the wildlife, the plants, and everything within. It's a web of living.
And, the federal government has, many, many years ago, banned specific ceremonial practices of our people. And specifically, they've banned those parts of the ceremony that involved igniting fire on the landscape.
Fire suppression was very enforced. The Native people had a target on their back. Money was put out for bounty to, kill natives. And because of that, for hundreds of years, our forest has been lacking fire. And with that, a majority of our forest right now is, not looking healthy. It's very dense. A lot of invasive species and a lot of understory, a lot of fuel buildup.
Extractive industries have been here since contact with Gold Rush, and then the timber industry, and the forests were established is when, people's homes were being burned out. Children were California Indian children. There's laws that allow them to be enslaved. They're also being forcibly removed from their families and put into boarding schools like my grandma.
Those things, along with climate change, have drastically changed what it looks like around here.
Climate change and global warming are terms that get used to talk about what's happening in the global atmospheric system. And they refer, to the ways that all kinds of heat trapping gases, carbon dioxide in particular, but others as well, are creating a kind of a blanket so that the overall global temperature is warming. There's a lot of certainty about the changes that are coming on the big picture. And there's many models that are being used to what is called downscale, what those changes mean for the local climate basin. There's changes in precipitation patterns that'll look like an increase of flooding by the end of the century, either rain on snow events in winter, which is where we've seen a lot of the really big floods in the past. or really strong microbursts, which we've also already seen where large amounts of rain come in a very short period of time. Changes in wind patterns as temperature changes, increase in the number of very hot days, increase in the length of the fire season, increase in species invasions, both aquatic and forest pests like sudden oak death. These are all really serious, significant changes that we're already seeing now and will continue.
We've been doing a lot of work with sudden oak death in the last couple of years. A lot isn't known about it, and a lot of studies still have to get done. But this thought that in climate change in certain areas, you get longer, warmer, but wetter springs. So if you're having longer and wetter springs, then you're increasing the availability and the chances of it spreading. It's extremely harmful to tan oaks and black oaks, especially. It does kill other and affect other plant species, but with those two trees, it has like a high mortality rate. Not everyone realizes that, especially with tan oaks, but also black oaks and other plants that it affects, that there's this strong cultural connection, obviously, in our area. Besides just knowing that, oh, there's going to be ecological change here, but that there's like this strong cultural connection with the acorns and with food security and with ceremonies and with our, and with identity as Kodik people.
Even though I think our people in this environment have seen so many different shifting climates and environments, what we're seeing is like really rapidly changing environments. And it has a lot to do with the way that people use the land and resources that are limited. Even in my lifetime, my short lifetime, I've seen, how the fish have been impacted. I remember as a child getting tired of eating fish, which I can't even imagine now, because it's such a rare thing now to be able to enjoy it.
The climate impacts will always be in conjunction with things that have happened in the past, like fire suppression, and with the ways that we handle and respond to the changing climate. Are there salvage logging that's going to happen? Do we replant with plantation? What kinds of chemicals are going to be used in fire retardants, for example? All of those things make a difference. So all of those are places where the tribe can be involved in intervening, in setting policy, and communicating about the importance of certain practices.
If there's no forest around us, how are we going to teach our children to manage these resources, let alone eat or use these resources? If there's no fish in the river, how are you going to teach the next generations below how to fish, how to be purposeful? I think every human being needs to feel some kind of purpose, contribution to life. And if you don't have that feeling, man or woman, to contribute to the next generations, then that kind of ties back into their mental health. I want my people to feel healthy, to feel happy, the simple things in life.
Climate change affects the health of the environment, which affects the health of our people in general. That could fit into like even health services. I know counselors use a lot of cultural arts as a form of therapy. Health services uses that as well. Community members in general, rely on a lot of things in the environment.
My grant is written for people who have experienced trauma. Unfortunately, most Native Americans qualify as having experienced trauma through historical trauma. Genocide is obviously a huge trauma, but it's the trauma of losing your culture, and that's cultural genocide, and that is the main trauma that's being continued. Our culture is completely based on where we're from, which is the land, and all of our ceremonies and everything are based on access to the land, access to our sites.
You should feel like you can look around at places that are special to you and feel like you have the tools to take care of them.
Tribal people will just be able to have the freedom to maintain areas on their own. That's a big factor.
Not having management of materials was a reason why basketry almost died out for a while, because I've tried to weave with bad stuff before and I made bad stuff. And then when I've had good materials that were managed and burned and taken care of, it was just like so much easier to weave. And I thought for a long time, I thought I was just a bad weaver. And I was like, no, it was the materials. And part of the healing for the kids I work with, the families I work with, is incorporating that back into typical counseling.
the most impactful thing on our land and on our environment and on our plant animal relatives is that missing component of Cuttook people being able to use these places, because that's what kept everything in balance. More important than the return of fire is the return of Cuttook people to their places and to the decision-making tables about how this land is used and managed and cared for.
The current wildfire situation that is sort of all-consuming, it is a huge threat to tribal sovereignty because it's difficult to penetrate that apparatus that sort of comes in. It's non-local, doesn't mesh well with tribal consultation, you know, almost like a martial law is imposed where it slows down highways, slows down different areas of the forest.
As we're traveling the roads from Orleans to Wairika, sometimes the road is closed due to wildfire. And so the tribal members and community members and our crew may have to take another route or not even be able to get to where we wanted to go. And that can happen in the winter also with floods or slides due to previous wildfires. Some of the resources that tribal members and community members would be trying to access would probably be huckleberries and acorns and hunting. Some of the other resources that tribal members and community members need to access are the clinics and emergency resources, schools, housing, community elder programs, and things like that.
As the climate changes and things get harder for everyone, access to traditional management, access to traditional foods, having tribal sovereignty recognize all of those kinds of issues can come up again. And climate change is an opportunity for people in the tribe to communicate about them, to take a stand.
To fulfill that obligation that we have to this place and to our people, we have to maintain that level of political integrity to be able to influence those decisions that affect, you know, communities and people's lives, both short-term during the incident, but also long-term.
I have personally seen in our community, which is a pretty late contact community, that as we have more access to our land and our resources and our culture, the land also benefits with the tribe being able to have controlled burns again. We are seeing the benefits of that, and we are helping prevent like these huge wildfires.
I mean, if you look at the past history of the Kirk people on the Klamath River, the fact that we're even still here is inspirational. It's a miracle, and that we are getting stronger and more of us. And so we have more of an active role. And each year I see us becoming more involved in different agencies. We're not like down here and it's a patriarchal relationship anymore.
We're not only still here, we're still doing the things that we've always done. We're still practicing our world renewal ceremonies. We're still adapting to changing conditions in this place. We need to go back to what works. And what works is what has worked in this place for thousands of years. The use of fire as the primary management tool. Fire is our medicine.
When we came into the land was inhabited by spirit people. And then they went into the sky and into the ground, into the rocks, into the animals. And so we traveled through the forest with that thought, that heartfelt thought and feeling. So they are not commodities, they are not resources.
The Crook tribe is doing a lot of planning around climate change. One of the first things that we've done is create the climate vulnerability assessment, which is a document that looks at ranges of ways that habitats and species are vulnerable in light of climate change. And one of the emphasis of that document was around fire and the increased frequency of high severity fire. And right now we're working on the climate adaptation plan. Climate adaptation is a way of trying to prepare for climate change There's lots of things that can be done, even though there are trends that are coming no matter what. And amongst the things that can be done is really a revitalization of kind of cultural practices. There's a lot of information about how to use fire that is incredibly important to bring back. And the tribe has been very active in doing that. This can be one of the most effective and proactive things that the tribe can do around climate change.
The favorite place I like to be in the woods is in a burned area. I do. I love the energy. I love the carbon. And the plants that come up after a prescribed burn are really healthy. They're really, full of energy.
I grew up weaving, gathering, and it's something in my life that I value very highly. It helps build identity and a sense of self.
The health of the people is dependent on women because women are the heart of the family. Because of colonization, we have a disconnect between men and families. And I feel like helping to manage materials for women who make the regalia that everybody needs to use brings families together more. Like for my husband, he has to get so many materials from me and manage them for me. And it's really important because it shows that he values what I do. And also he involves my son so that he teaches them that they have to value what I do.
Watching my grandma go out there and start to light stuff up, I'd be the first one. I was the oldest grandson. I'd go out there and help her burn piles up Salmon River. So you kind of get used to how things burn in this country. Grandma, she teaches you, hey, this is what I want to save. So that's how I started learning about different plants, different ferns and what they're used for, how to gather basket material, and just all the things that relate to our resources out here. So at a very young age, I started learning that, and not all together like I wanted to. It was like, here, you got to go help do this work. So it was always that type of thing. And little did I know, later on in life, it really was good for this type of stuff. So I've been burning piles with my grandma every season of my life forever.
Our work has been kind of connecting fire back to this place, connecting it to the hazel that's there, connecting it to the artifacts that are there, connecting it to the rocks and the histories that might be there.
Our connection with nature is so undescribable through English that you can't really understand it or fathom what's going on with that connection until you experience it. And so once we got a healthy forest out here, we can then try to connect that to the social well-being. And that comes with the resources that come out of it, our diet. And so if we have these resources with these healthy forests, then, it's like kind of a trickle effect. You've got a healthy body, you're gonna have a healthy mind, Socially, physically, and mentally, and spiritually, all have a connection.
In the modern era, we are engaged in climate adaptation plans and vulnerability assessments. All of those things are not anything new. They're new to other people, but they're not new to us.
The work that the tribe is doing is quite important on a regional level and nationally recognized. One of the things that's really exciting about this work is the way that climate change is being taken as a strategic opportunity to restore human responsibilities in the ecosystem and to restore traditional practices, many of which are really essential in light of the changes that are coming in the climate. There's also an emphasis on strengthening partnerships. Climate change is such a big problem that it's going to take people working together across agencies, across jurisdictions, across different kinds of knowledges. And there's also an emphasis on policy change, on getting policies in place that will assist in making these sometimes very costly or potentially liable actions actually feasible.
In December 2018, we got some new authorities that will enable us to extend our forest management to the National Forest System lands, as well as compact funding from the Forest Service. We could very realistically be burning Off-Field Mountain as part of our rural renewal ceremonies again in the next 20 years. And we would start to bridge into some of the maintenance that can be done with just families getting together and burning and harvesting resources and becoming a society that lives with fire again in this place.
the biggest part of this project is getting the fire back on the landscape. And there's going to be some Doug fir taken out to restore some oak woodlands and some different diversity out in our woods, you know, for all of our basket weavers and our hunters and gatherers. And I just really feel like holistic landscape management is where we can have huge impacts. We're not managing the landscape for one thing in particular. That's just not the way that culturally we work.
One of my greatest fears in getting into the stewardship agreement realm is becoming another timber dependent tribal community. We've seen what that's done, being dependent on the extraction principle. It's not what we're working for. We're working for more of a holistic approach, and with timber being a byproduct.
Doug Fir, 134.
This crew, we've got a crew of 12 people, and there was only 2 non-local Indians on the crew. So I think that's been really powerful for these folks and for myself to get all this experience out in the woods. And yeah, I think that this work is definitely worthwhile, and it's work that we can be proud of.
Whenever we get to go work around people's houses and their properties and their land that their great grandma was born on, or a land that was, you know, special to somebody at their backyard or whatever, or in a beautiful place like this, I'm always honored to be the one to tend to it.
Our practices in terms of using fire to manage this landscape, that's not experimental. Other people have been here since the beginning of time. Those are tried and true practices that we know work. Fire suppression has failed.
Building capacity is really important. Bringing in interns for the tribe in the Forest Service.
We need tribal people to get more engaged in land management activities. Our limiting factor for capacity is we need hydrologists, botanists, foresters.
We have to be the ones that take the jobs. And as long as we don't lead those jobs, they're going to be ours. You hear where the job is, you go get the application, you fill it out. If you don't know how to fill it out and you don't have a computer, all Orleans has a computer center. Happy Camp has a computer center. Wairika, the tribal people will help you. They're actually hiring younger people that are just out of college to be their workforce people. You can find mentors, you know, in the tribe. You can find mentors if you worked for the fire crew. The jobs are there. Go get them. Go look for them.
We've had quite a few entry-level jobs flown recently, and those young tribal students that are going to school, we've developed quite a few opportunities for internships and summer employment, and to help earn some money to spend while going to school and becoming those foresters and hydrologists and botanists and all that of the future.
Working on fires and beginning my career in the Forest Service, I was a very hard worker. No matter how hard I worked, all I got was big muscles. So then I decided to go to school. Well, once I enrolled in school, been in there a couple semesters, boom, I started getting the job opportunities because I had the skills to compete with the kids from the city. But I also had the smarts of my crew people and of the forest. So I could excel at what they were teaching at Humboldt State.
The Cuddick youth, especially the ones who grew up in this area, are the next leaders, especially with climate change, because climate change it's gonna keep going.
The fact that so much more people are coming back to traditional values and ways and making that a part of their lives, that's just going to mean there'll be a lot more people who are going to want to protect and preserve what's here and to work together as far as even maintaining like willows along the river. You know, if need be, we can do it ourselves. It would take some work crews to like cut them down to maintain them. But, you know, in the future, if there's a lot more weavers, then that won't be such a big thing. I feel like just more people are going to be able to help and wanting to help.
This is an especially important time for young people to be involved. There's a real legitimacy to your voices. And so when young people speak out, the world listens in a different way.
We have had the opportunity to bring youth workers out with us in the field. One of the things I really try and stress to them is that, you know, you already know so much. And not only does it fit in with what we're already doing? But, you know, through doing this work, we've been able to shape new ways of doing things.
There's roles that they play that are critically important moving forward. But, you know, the non-Indian youth have a role to play as well, creating this interaction to where youth can learn from one another and can be exposed to different worldviews. Because what we need today more than ever is hope for the future.
When you're young, it's hard to find perspective sometimes. And just thinking about how beautiful it really is here and how lucky I feel like I was to have grown up here and how much I love it every day. I feel like the youth and everybody, you know, feels the same way. Like you just like, care so much about it and think of it as a relationship that you have with like you have with people.
I'm really inspired by all the youth that I see and get to interact with. They're like really passionate. I think we should all be super hopeful and have a lot of faith in not only ourselves, but, you know, future generations too.
But it's very important that they also understand the purpose. Again, feel purpose, you know, feeling like they're not just coming out here for a paycheck or coming out here just as labor, you know, that the work they're really putting down right now is so important to not only themselves, but the rest of the community. And so the fact that they're acknowledged is really important. We need like love, we need support. People saying that I have your back, you know, that goes a long ways.
Climate change is pretty daunting. It's pretty overwhelming. I encourage people to look at that data that's available on the website or come connect with me. At the same time, it's really important to know there's a lot of things that people can do. It's also super important, though, not to be doing any of it alone. And this is not a problem that any of us are going to solve on our own. So people learning, whether it's at your workplace or in schools or other groups that you're connected with, thinking about how is it going to be affecting things? How is the fact that the stream temperatures are going to be so much warmer than they already are, or the increasing frequency of fire, how is that going to affect people's lives in your community, your neighbors, your cousins? And what can people do together?
I'm just really happy to be raising a generation of people who are happy to be and proud to be Native people. That's not something that we've always had. I just want to say good luck to those youth and that to not be overwhelmed by it, because there are people who have survived through so much. We're here for you. You're not going to be alone. It's not going to be what it was for their grandparents. It's not going to be that. They can do it.
Just remembering all those generations that have come before us and all the things that they've had to deal with. You know, it's heavy, heavy stuff. And we are a result of that strength and a result of that resiliency. And, you know, I think we're going to be okay. But, you know, that's because of the work that we're all doing right now. So, yeah.
Tuvenik Yanchip, Wekura Yamach, Kukupa Inatihesh, Wekura Puran, Uski Katihesh.
Ayad, ayad, hey, 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 hey,
I just want to take a second and say for anybody who joined during the video, we're going to now move over into a podcast. But if you could pause your video, that way it might stream better, that would be great. So I will start the next one now. Let me just do this. And this is Managing Wildfire Through Cultural Burning from NPR.
The Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Hit the play button to learn about the important role MEDC plays in forming partnerships and supporting businesses across the state, particularly in this last year.
You're listening to Shortwave from NPR. Hey, everybody. Emily Kwong here with NPR climate correspondent Lauren Summer. Hey, Lauren.
Hey, Emily.
So in California, where you are, this week, the state set a record for the most acres burned in any fire season, more than 2 million acres so far. And in an average fire season in California, around 300,000 acres burned. So things are bad.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I'm in the Bay Area, and when I woke up this morning, the sky is completely full of smoke because there's 3 huge fires burning all around this whole area. But, you know, today, I'm actually not here to talk about those kind of destructive fires. I'm here to talk about good fire.
Good fire. Okay.
This kind of fire, it actually has an incredibly long history and one that was erased for many decades. And I got to see it in the Sierra Nevada foothills.
Good morning.
There were around 60 people, you know, gathered in this oak woodland, and this was back in February, and everyone was standing in a big circle.
So what we're doing out here is restoring life.
That's Ron Good. He's tribal chairman of the North Fork Mono. He brought this group together from tribes around Northern California for this 2-day ceremony to do what's known as cultural burning, basically setting low-grade fires on the landscape.
We don't put fire on the ground and not know how it's going to turn out. That's what makes it cultural burning, because we cultivate.
So cultural burning, these aren't like the big wildfires you see on the news at all.
No, these kind of fires, they're controlled and they're low to the ground. They basically clean up the overgrown brush that would be the fuel for those really big fires. Native American tribes burned hundreds of thousands of acres this way in cultural burns. You know, they used to at least.
Right. Used to before settler colonialism arrived, and many tribes were forcibly removed from their land.
Exactly. Which is why this ceremony is really interesting, because Good invited people from the state and federal government. You know, those are the entities that largely banned cultural burning a century ago. But California has since realized there's no way to reduce the risk of extreme wildfires without using this good fire on the landscape, including cultural burns. So they're starting to work together. But first, Bill Leonard, who's tribal chairman of the Southern Sierra Miwok, needs to give a blessing.
Today on the show, how Native American tribes are trying to restore traditional burning on the lands where they once lived, and how these burns may help California get a handle on destructive wildfires in the future. You're listening to Shortwave, the Daily Science podcast from NPR. So Lauren, you were telling us about how in February, you were heading out with a group of tribes from Northern California conducting a cultural burn. Very cool. But first, tell me how cultural burns are different from, say, controlled or prescribed burns, something I know the Forest Service does.
Yeah, the Forest Service and, you know, other fire agencies, they set controlled fires too. And that's for the vegetation. They want to get rid of it so that there's not too much that builds up, because overgrown vegetation can make fires more extreme.
Right.
Cultural burning, it does that too, but the tribes also do it to encourage certain plants to grow. Like the first thing the team did that day was actually a harvest.
Oh.
Yeah, they headed out to some tall bushes. They're sour berries, which is also known as 3-leaf sumac. And, you know, this was late winter, so there were these long, spindly branches that were totally bare of leaves.
So my mom is a basket weaver.
That's where I met Ray Gutierrez.
I'm Ray Gutierrez. Manahu, Nunanian Ray Gutierrez. Inem Muktachimono. So Muktachimono.
He's clipping the longest, straightest branches, which are used in traditional basket weaving. And then after being harvested, the plant is burned to encourage more growth like that.
All of our basket material needs to be tended to in some way. So they need to be burned. And then next year, we'll probably have sticks that are 6, 7 feet tall in 1 year.
Fire in the hole.
So does the fire burn the plant completely?
Yeah, like completely to the ground. And it really actually happens pretty fast. But the rootstock stays alive. So, after the spring rains come, the plant will resprout.
Got it. And the harvest can kind of happen again.
Yeah.
And I know some plants in California, they're kind of used to being burned regularly.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people forget this, but they're adapted to regular fires. I mean, historically, those are both naturally caused fires, by lightning. And then there were fires set by tribes. And, Ron says they burned like this for millennia, to encourage plant growth, also to shape the landscape, to attract certain game, for a lot of reasons.
When I was a kid, I learned from my mother, but my mother got in trouble when she burned because the fire department, didn't want her doing what we're doing today.
As you probably know, white settlers had a very different take on fire.
They came with their concepts of being afraid of fire. They didn't understand fire in the sense of the tool that it could be to create and what it did to help generate and rejuvenate the land.
And, let's not forget, there's a bigger history here. When white settlers arrived in California in the 1800s, there was an intentional and violent campaign to destroy their tribal culture.
Yeah.
I spoke to Beth Rose Middleton Manning about that. She's professor of Native American Studies at UC Davis, and she brought her students that day to be part of the ceremony.
There was actually a bounty on California Indian people. The governor had announced a war of extermination. So you have all that history, and it really fostered removal, settler ownership of indigenous lands.
So tribal burning basically stopped. And then fast forward a couple decades to the early 1900s, and that's when the federal government began an era of fire suppression.
Please be careful with fire.
That's the whole Smokey the Bear era, right?
Yeah.
Make sure your fire is dead out. Remember, only you can prevent forest fires.
Yeah, it's just interesting that the legacy of this idea that fire is always something that's bad and that has to be put out continued from settler colonialism onwards.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, up until the 1970s, the Forest Service had this rule they called the 10 a.m. rule. It was basically that all fires should be put out by 10 a.m. the next day. But all that suppression, it caused a lot of vegetation to build up in California. The forests became denser, and that set the stage for extreme destructive fires. So fire managers have realized, that has to change. And they started embracing prescribed burns. And now we're slowly being open to cultural burning too.
So that brings us to today, where Western states are grappling with how to manage wildfire season. And you're going to talk about how cultural burns kind of fit into that.
Right. And so Ron and other tribal leaders have been trying to restore cultural burning for a while. And, not just teaching the concepts to people, but actually bringing people out to the land to practice it. And that's not easy to do when the land is no longer legally theirs, as Beth Rose described to me.
I think it's really important that we don't think about traditional burning as what information can we learn from Native people about how they care for the land, and then exclude people and move on with non-Natives managing the land. But that Native people are at the forefront and are leading.
Okay, so this event is maybe a way to do that.
Yeah, which is why Ron invited, these government officials to participate and kind of get their hands dirty during this ceremony. Like Jennifer Montgomery, she directs California's Forest Management Task Force. So it's her job to figure out how to deal with all these overgrown forests. And, she was there helping light this fire in a big grassy field using a drip torch.
That was super empowering. I mean, I think every woman should get a chance to use a drip torch.
Is that like a flamethrower or something?
Not quite. It's basically like a watering can lighter thing that it basically spilled out fire instead of water.
That's pretty cool, Phil.
Yeah. I mean, by the time she was done, there was this kind of giant line of fire that kind of spread out pretty quickly across this entire field. But remember, this was February, winter. So the fire burns itself out pretty quickly, and then all that dried brush is just gone.
And it's an opportunity for me to really see how effective cultural fire can be in addressing the issues we have around uncontrolled wildfire. The work that we did today, if a fire comes through there, it will drop down to the ground. And frankly, it may, given the right circumstances, just stop the fire entirely on its own.
That is a big shift in thinking from the government's historical stance.
Yeah, and I mean, California has a goal to reduce the vegetation from 500,000 acres. And the federal government has the same goal for their land. So this is, 1 million acres total.
Wow.
And they're nowhere near that at this point.
Okay, so you basically got the government, which has a lot of land and needs a lot of work to be done. And then tribes who have little access to their own ancestral lands and want to be doing more of this. And they're working in a kind of partnership.
Yeah, they're working on kind of forming it, at least at this point. I mean, a few other California tribes, the Yurok and the Karuk, they have agreements with the Forest Service to manage land with cultural fire. And some of that is public land, but there's still a long way to go. And in a lot of California counties, you actually need a special permit to do this because, air officials don't want a lot of smoke in the air on days when there's already concerns about air quality. So some counties have created a special tribal burn permit to make it easier for them, but some haven't.
So going back to Ron Good, the tribal chairman, just given everything his tribe has been through, what is his outlook these days and looking into the future?
He told me, no matter what you're facing, all you can do is work on your own backyard. And his backyard goes across 4 counties, as he says. So that's what Ron has spent his life doing, is trying to spread this knowledge.
I can teach from the book, or I can teach in the classroom. I can show you videos, but hey, let me take you out on the land and let you do it. Let you really see and find out what it's all about, right? Oh, there's no better teaching than that.
And when he said that, it was the very end of the day, he was looking out across, that field, which was totally black and burnt, and it was still kind of smoking a little bit.
I'm excited. I'm elated because I'm looking around at what we've done, and what we've accomplished, and how beautiful the land is looking, and it is. It is.
Not everyone would see that, I think, but that's what he's trying to change.
Lauren, thanks so much for taking us along with you to see this and experience this.
Thanks, Emily.
This episode was produced by Brett Bachman, fact-checked by Rebecca Ramirez, and edited by Viet Le. I'm Emily Kwong. Thanks for listening to Shortwave from NPR.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. And if you'd like to turn your videos off at this time, we welcome that. Otherwise, you can keep them off if you'd like to. So at this point, we are going to break out into the breakout rooms and have small discussions before we have a large community discussion. So if you would like to opt out of that, we'd ask that you sign out now. That way the right amount of people get assigned to the right rooms. And at this moment, we will have Emily read our community guidelines for discussion.
Jen, sorry, you might need to enable us to start ours if we were delinquent and you had to turn us off.
Cindy, can you do that since you turned them off?
Yep, I'll do that right now.
Okay, great.
Turn on the delinquents.
Emily, do you need the guidelines?
I'm just pulling it up.
Okay, because I was gonna say I can also paste them in the chat too for everyone.
I got it right here. Okay, thanks, Jen. Here are our community discussion guidelines. Number 1, we agree to blame ourselves, others, for the misinformation we have learned
but to accept responsibility for not repeating misinformation after we have learned otherwise. Number 2, we agree to listen respectfully to each other without interruptions. Only one person speaks at a time. Number 3, we acknowledge that we may be at different stages of learning on the content and discussion topics. Number 4, we agree that no one should be required or expected to speak for their whole race or gender. We can't, even if we wanted to. Number 5, we will hold each other's best interest at heart. We hope everyone has come to the table to learn, grow, and share. We will trust that people are doing the best they can. Let's challenge and encourage each other to do better. Number 6, share responsibility for including all voices in the discussion. If you have a tendency to dominate discussions, try taking a step back. If you tend to stay quiet, try challenging yourself to share ideas so others can learn from you. Number 7, silence is golden. Sometimes there will be long pauses. Sometimes silence can create space for folks who need that space to come forward. We agree to not fill silences out of discomfort. We will hold this silence with care and move forward intentionally. We welcome those of you whose minds are bursting with ideas to write them in the chat bar. Number 8, the facilitators are not experts. They are here to help facilitate the process. They and everyone in the group are here to learn. Number 9, it's okay not to know. Keep in mind that we are still learning and are bound to make mistakes when approaching a complex task or exploring new ideas. Be open to changing your mind and make space for others to do so as well. Number 10, the facilitators are not moderators. They are not trained to moderate personal grievances. If discussion stops being about the reading and instead breaches into accusations and aggression, please respect the facilitator switching gears and refocusing on the text. If any of these guidelines are breached, a metabolic team member will reach out to you privately in the chat to provide a reminder. If the guidelines continue to be breached, they will provide a verbal call in. By staying on this Zoom call, you are agreeing to these community guidelines for our discussion period. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. So at this time, I've created the breakout rooms and I will send them all to you and you can join those. And we'll all be in the breakout rooms for 6 minutes. At the 2-minute marks, I will send notification where we are so you can switch if you want to have someone else speak at that moment. And then at the end of that, I will call us back in and then we'll have 60 minutes to end that discussion. And then we will all do a group community discussion. So enjoy and I'll see you all in 6 minutes. Where are you looking it up on YouTube?
Yeah.
My mom said that she recently found a bunch of books that she was going through and she found like some embroidery books. So she was going to send them to me, but I don't know if that will be this year, next year, or the year after that, that it'll actually get in the mail. But I'll happily share that with you once I receive it.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you all had a wonderful discussion. And now we're going to open up the segment to a larger group discussion where we can start off with if anyone would like to comment on what they discussed in the breakout rooms, or if you want to share what you're working on. It's wide open.
We got kind of quickly into practical and exciting things and then got caught off. Deborah, I was wondering, do you want to tell everybody about the MacArthur Park project? And it's a big deal. It's kind of we started talking about the video and the podcast, and that took us quickly into thinking about the assessment and wishing that all of our cities had like ways to assess the danger of the way that we're living, and how could we engage with different urban entities to catalyze understanding about what kind of peril we're in. And then Deborah was telling us about the exciting work that she's a part of on the MacArthur Park big kind of regenerative revitalization project. And then we got cut off, but it was such an interesting conversation. We don't have to go there now, but I just wanted to say, I'd love to hear about it soon, but that was so frustrating. It was like 23 seconds and she was trying to race everything in. Thanks to Sylvia's good questions.
I'd like to hear about the MacArthur Park project too.
Oops, are you muted? Deborah, I think you're muted.
I was talking about Sylvia's comments. So her comments about the climate vulnerability assessment and climate adaptation plans that were needed for the area, and I totally agree with her on that. And I think the fire conversation moved into soils pretty quickly. And of course, for me and probably for a lot of people here, water is the critical missing factor in their landscapes. We have all this paving and roofs and what have you. So we turned our thoughts to Lauren Bond's water wheel and her and the new building blocks of the water wheel revolution, which sounds pretty amazing and intense for a 6-minute conversation. And then we talked about, let's see, we moved into funding and where do you find out more information about the MacArthur Park project, and that's on the Measure W as Safe Clean Water page. And the one thing I would like to take home about MacArthur Park is something that a lot of people don't know, and I didn't know as a landscape architect for 20 years. I had no idea that resource was a natural spring. It's a sacred water piece that's been treated with such disdain. I mean, there is a subway under it. There's a street that cut through it. It's been reduced by 50%. It's been lined with asphalt. It's been maligned in so many ways that it's a big asphalt lined swimming pool now. So I feel like when I learned, the more I learned, the more I felt that this project, needed a voice. It needed people like in this conversation to know about it, because it's all of your projects. It's all of our projects, and it's a sacred resource that needs to be done with sensitivity. And I don't want to sound corny, but I think female sensibilities. I think really this is something that is just so important for this area, for our area, for Los Angeles. So anyway, and then that's the reason why we couldn't help but sort of shift the conversation in 6 minutes. So without dominating this conversation, I think I'll cut it off right here.
Wait, Deborah, did you say that there's a natural spring under MacArthur Park that there's a project to now revive?
Well, it wasn't going to be that way. It was very sad that water was being dumped into a concrete storm drain and taken out to the ocean or to Hyperion for treatment is what was intended to be done with it. And I just want to say I'm a bureaucrat. I work with, I'm in Bureau of Sanitation. I work for the city. And Lauren mentioned something that was really insightful about incorporating bureaucrats in their work. And I find that so nice to hear her say that, because I'm fighting them and I'm on the inside. So it's almost like when I heard her say that, I thought, yeah, maybe I should try that. But no, I do try it, and it isn't always easy for anyone to do. And so just so you all know, if you do a project like with the bureaucrat, it's going to be tough. But this project at MacArthur is designed to take stormwater, treat it, and offset the lake, which, if you call it a lake, okay, that God bless you, it's a lake, but it's really a water feature because it's being fed with drinking water right now. So we want to feed it with the lateral hydrology on that site, the spring water, and we want to feed it with other things. So I'm sorry, I try to cut myself off, but once you get me going on this topic, it's hard to stop. So let me just cut myself off here. And you guys,
really cool. Thank you for sharing. What a joy.
And it's an LA sanitation project, or is it a city of LA?
It's Bureau of Sanitation, Watershed Protection Division, and so far it's been my project. I was the one who did the original funding proposals and all of the scoring. It's been mine, but at this point it's going to go to Bureau of Engineering, and it's going to be engineered like we did our Prop O program pretty much. So I'll be kind of taking a little bit of a step back and just commenting on the landscape elements at this point. It looks like that's how it's going to go forward, but it has a lot more opportunities. And one thing, basket weaving. If anyone here is a basket weaver, I would love to hear from you, because we're going to be doing floating islands there. And maybe we could weave them at Lauren's studio. I'm just saying, I don't know. We could do, because we can make the plants grow at the lake and floating on the island, and then the art could be done over there. But it would just be such a nice connection to have an artist involved, and other things too, which we could all brainstorm on, but I'm dominating right now, so I'm going to try to shut up.
Well, I mean, I think the baskets idea is good, because I think it revives a little bit of the indigenous connection to the land and to the use of the plants on the land. So it's not just a sort of decoration or a quote environmental amenity, but a living resource that humans interacted with and used. So that's a good idea. Were any of the indigenous people involved? Was there any sort of tribal consultation on this at all, or not? Probably not. Huh?
At this point, we haven't, but we're going to do a CEQA. So I think there will be investigations, and we have done other with Gabrielinos in Debs Park. I mean, we have connections, but it would be nice to do some more. I mean, I'm sure that would be on the menu of a non-engineering project of a more culturally well-rounded effort, which I think this will be a very well-rounded multidisciplinary project. But we have basket materials that we can grow, like elephant grass. We could grow, I mean, I didn't even know that willow, I mean, I should have known, I guess, that willow was used, but I mean, things that would be really useful to grow for the baskets can be harvested from our parks in some of the ways that they were showing on this video tonight. Maybe we could get some help on that. That would be really nice. We have a lake down in southern part of Los Angeles called Machado Lake that has a wetland that's 60 acres below there, and we did a project there. But it's really kind of gotten out of hand, and that would be an area, Lauren, that you might want to, I don't know, we could talk about later if you want. But I worked on that project too. That was a well-funded project, and not anything was done in that 60 acres. That maybe management and arts could be really a neat thing to try there. We have one other project at the end of the 110 freeway that's just getting started, and we're going to put a lot of grasses in there. And so what grasses we're going to use will be native, but willows, harvesting willows would be really neat. Do you know where the Ed P. Reyes project is off of Humboldt and between Avenue 18 and 19? Does anyone know that? Yeah. There's a lot of willows there, and they get kind of unruly. I mean, maybe this type of thing could be done there. I don't know the burning part. There's really nothing around there but metro and a parking lot and streets. So it might be a place where, I mean, I don't know if we're looking for a place to try this kind of thing or a demonstration, but it might be a place to look at. It'd certainly be close to Lauren's studio if you were ever going to need basket materials, and it's 3 acres and lots of willows. So just another source of materials. I'm sure they would need a lot. So.
Deborah, I've got a related question. I'm wondering if you know of or have done any work on the Curuvugnu Springs in West LA near the VA hospital on Uni High School property.
No, but I know West LA is full of springs. There's a lot of springs there. So I'm sorry, I don't know that particular one.
Okay, I had done a site visit there as part of Metabolic Studio a number of years ago when we were working on the Strawberry Flag project that Lauren launched with the veterans at the West LA VA, and it is a sacred springs. I think it's a national historic site too. There's actually a marker up there, and the springs used to be full of fish and life, and it's absolutely gorgeous. There's actually been a lot of excavation archaeology remains that have been found there. And I don't remember exactly under what's tribe jurisdiction there is, but it's a site of ceremony, of dance, of ritual, of practice. There's a very small cultural center there. And the problem with that springs is that it's downhill from Wilshire Boulevard by about 2 blocks, and all of the dry cleaning chemicals have drained off into the water table, into the springs, and they basically rendered that springs dead. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place with tons of willows and a native healing plant garden. And so, I don't know, that's just another special one that I happen to know of in LA. And
I'll look it up. That sounds really neat.
I think it's Tongva. That's who's taking care of it. But there were fights about it. People were saying that it was in their family. There've been fights, so I don't know what the situation is now. But it's on the Uni campus, right? It's on the border of the Uni campus, Uni High.
Yeah, it's actually on the Uni High campus, and the Tongva. You're right, Roxanne. Tribe does have ownership and access to it. Yeah, I'm gonna send a link in the chat bar.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of has been closed at different times because they have found remains there, and it's a ritual site, and I think they have that status.
We're going to save 64 acre feet of water with this project for drinking, and a year, at least 64 acre feet. That's what we expect. So there's a lot you can do to give back to this society, I think, with that water. It'd be really neat to consider, think of something that would make sense for what we're going through right now with the homeless or the unhoused populations. And I don't know, just thinking about what that water would have been used for if there was a spring there. How do you return those services to people? I think that's really what my goal, or the goal should be for the project, because we'll save drinking water, but what are we really going to make back? We're not going to give a spring back to people. We can't do that. So how do you make up for a spring? That would be really neat to think of. I mean, what does it give? It gives you so much.
I'm curious to know anybody else's reflections of the video or the podcast that we heard. Anything that anybody shared that you want to reshare? Or...
I'll share. So we talked about, or I did, about, looking back at our ancestry and, I've found out in the last few years that most of my people landed here in the 1600s, early 1700s from Scotland and England. And it's, the story goes, as I've heard, that the Cherokee thought that the white man was mentally ill, and the way they were so aggressive, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I know that they got along, and then they didn't get along, and then they got along, and so there was a like kind of a dance. But I find it interesting that like the Scottish are clan people, and I think that they had similar kind of tribal rituals. But I look at why would that white man be so different, and to land in America and want to just all of a sudden take over all the resources. Well, they came out of an ice age, a mini ice age for a few hundred years. So I kind of look at it like maybe that kind of extreme survival. They had come out of a war. England they were fighting over the lands in Scotland. So I don't know, I'm trying to make sense of all that, because I do, after I finish my art books, like 5 that are on the table here, I want to write a fiction story between the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, because those were some pretty ugly years, and a lot of poverty, and but yeah, destruction. And there was also a lot of intermarriage. I'm pretty sure that my 4th grade or 5th grade grandmother was Chickamauga Indian. But there was a period of time where there was a lot of interracial marriage, just because there wasn't many people, So I think, I lived in California for a long time, and I moved to the Midwest. I've learned a lot more about American history through just being in the Midwest. And I feel like in California, sometimes we don't really know. I don't know. I didn't grow up in California. I grew up in Arizona. So I knew Arizona history. I knew all the tribes from Arizona, in the 4th grade, learning your state history. But yeah, America is how many years old now? I mean, we've been here since the early 1600s, the Anglo people. And I mean, that's a long time. I think we have a lot of history here to look at, why we made choices that we did. And I participate in a lot of Native American Zoom events, and I find it really helpful to kind of question my own assumptions. And so I would encourage that for sure. But in terms of the fire, yeah, I was raised to fear fire, and I've relaxed my idea about the idea of cultural burning, but I'm still a little anxious about it. So yeah, I guess I'm just saying I'm open to it, but I'm still questioning it.
What are the Native American Zoom events that you participate in that you're recommending? Maybe you could put that in the chat.
Yeah, I can look at my emails real quick and send you some. There's been 3 or 4 series that have been really great. I'll look them up and put them in the chat.
Roxanne, what are you making?
I'm making pavlova with accoutrement.
I've actually been thinking about your butterfly cake that you make.
I miss your food, Roxanne.
I'll do a drop off. People can come pick it up.
Be careful. I'll take you up on it.
Yeah, I'll drive to your house.
The tarts and the cakes and the sweet, wonderful things.
I wish I could share this tart I bought tonight because I don't want to eat the whole thing for breakfast. It was really good. I bought it at Lido Bakery. It's this really good tart.
Oh my God, show us.
You want me to show it to you?
Yeah.
I'll go get it.
Yeah. I'll show you my pavlova.
Please do.
I'll go get it. It's actually my first son's favorite cake, but I didn't make it for him in July, so I'm a little late.
Okay, let's see if I can do this nicely. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I actually bought 2 of them, one for my friend's birthday, but the other one doesn't have it cut yet. So you get to see both inside and outside of it. And I already started to eat it.
Delicious.
It's got strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries, no, blackberries in it. And when you heat it up with whipped cream, it's to die for. And the bakery that sells them is called Lido Bakery.
Where's that?
It's right next to the smog check, which is another sad story today. I didn't pass, so I've got to go back and get some more pies.
This is my pavlova. I'm going to put it baking because it's baking.
Wow.
Oh, let's see yours. I didn't.
Oh, okay, I'll do it again.
Oh, it's baking.
Yeah, here, this is it.
Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it.
Wow.
It's here. You can see it. Can you see it?
Beautiful.
I can smell it. All right, put mine back.
What are you sewing? Hey, Caroline, what are you sewing?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. I thought there was something. I'm repairing. I have this tablecloth that is all embroidered.
Oh my gosh.
And
You embroider it?
No, I didn't.
You
But there was a big spot here, in the center. So I'm just trying to echo a little bit of what I see here. I don't have the exact color, but I'm trying because I really want to wear it on the table, and so voilà. Mes amis, à bientôt. Bonsoir. On these beautiful notes, delicious. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye.
I like that you're going to wear it on the table. Is that a dance?
Oh, it's like a dance. It's definitely a beautiful dress
You're
for the
gonna wear
table. Mes amis, au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Bye.
I want to do another show and tell. Can I do a show and tell of my basket?
Yes,
Please.
This basket I bought in the Malibu farmers market, and it's from Africa, but it has like a really nice little note in here that tells you who made it and where they made it. I just thought this was pretty. I think I don't know why I want to show it because it's a basket, and I'm impressed by people who can make things like this, but I think this would be so cool. And it has a handle that I was told is made out of goat skin, and it was made by the husband. The fathers or the men, the household makes the goat skin handles, and the children make the string. I don't know what you call it. The fibers. They make the elephant grass, and then the women weave them. So this is cool. It's my show and tell for tonight, and I think
it's beautiful.
Fridays. For Friday, I'm doing pretty good. This is 7:05.
The basket's gorgeous. Did you get it recently, or is it from?
No, but well, there's some I got from Whole Foods. This one I got from Manhattan Beach. I mean, I buy them because I can't resist. I've got a bunch, and then I use them for gifts when I don't remember to get someone a present. I'll just wrap them up or give them as a gift because they're such good gifts for the store.
It's so fantastic.
Huh? Yeah, and they hold a lot of weight. I mean, you can put almost all your groceries in one basket and just carry it. So anyway,
Caroline uses them too. She always gets them. Yeah.
I have a bunch. I am going to sign off, ladies. Thank you for allowing me to join you. It was quite a pleasure. We had a long week. This week was a telecommuting week from hell. So I'm really glad that I got to make it to this point. And I thank you for letting me participate and listen in. And hopefully,
lovely to meet you, Deborah.
Yeah, nice to meet you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
What are holiday plans? Anybody?
No.
Well, we will be doing a Zoom on 12/25.
Well,
would like to join. We'll be holding space that night as well. Okay. So that's one of my plans. What about you?
My children are not going to come and visit me. Oh, and one of my children will be in the wilderness for 10 days, including Christmas Day. So she said, "Can we have a Zoom on New Year's Eve?" And we all said yes. So that's the plan.
A good plan. Oh, Maria, if you're speaking, you're muted.
I just said that there will be a lot of creative solutions to this holiday season.
I'm going to try to make pasta from scratch and bolognese sauce from scratch for Christmas as like my Christmas activity.
Wow.
Because I've never done either one of those before.
That's cool. Cindy, will you be making tamales?
Well, this year I'm secretly, I mean, it sounds bad, right? But I'm a little excited that we're not doing Christmas because then I don't have to clean the house. I don't have to decorate. I don't have to host. So secretly, I'm a little bit happy. I'm okay with it.
Good for you. That's great.
But I think this year I'm going to have my mom tell me how to make the tamales, or like, I know how to assemble them, but I don't know how to prepare them from scratch. So if she can show me, or not show me, tell me how to make the chili, I could maybe try to not poison my children. Hopefully they're edible.
Well, I'd be willing to trade my creamy chicken lime soup for some tamales.
Ooh, nice.
That's a good trade.
I'll meet you halfway at the studio.
Deal.
Are we having more weeks of the fire readings?
Yes, there's going to be one on 12/18, and then the next one, concluding the series, will be on 12/25.
I like the way they've been layered because the video and the podcast tonight was sort of reinforcing some of the things that we touched before. So it really does make for a deeper impression. I don't know if anybody has been following the Bioneers conference at all. Bioneers, maybe some people would know it, I think. They're based out of New Mexico, and they have 2 weekends, last weekend and this coming weekend, where they have a really amazing conference which spans environmental topics, not just sort of from environmental management perspective, but also from a holistic and life and cultural perspective and arts. And, you know, I love them. I think you'll find them on live TV and on, they have a TV channel as well as the annual conference and many things. And I attended last week's Sunday conference. It was really, really good. And one of the speakers was from Humboldt State University. She's a Mandan lady who I think resettled in California. Her name is Candy White. She's a professor at Humboldt. If somebody knows her, I'm not sure. But she did talk about the whole, you know, how to live in California with a recognition of what the indigenous have in the past contributed and still have to contribute, and the concept of land back and how she thinks about it. And it's kind of interesting because Deborah, I think it was, who left, was talking about, well, you can't give back a spring, but you can give back the concept of the water use from that spring. And I thought that was a nice little thought that came into her head related to the Bioneers. I'll try to put a chat link for the Bioneers, but they're very, they're good.
Some land was given to the, I'm forgetting the tribe in Santa Cruz in the mountains this last week. I forget how many acres. I can look it up and put a link in, but that was a big deal. I forget how many millions of dollars were given to, you know, purchase the land, but it was set aside for them. So yeah, that's something that's happening too, is, you know, you can set aside, if you own land, to give it back. And that, that's happening more and more. I know in Sonoma County over several years, the tribes up there, the Pomo, and they have been buying back their land. They use the casino money and then they buy back their own land. Yeah.
And as well, I think Candy in her talk talked about the notion of what they call public land or federal land, which in the West is the majority owner of the land is the federal government, and they call it, quote, public lands. They have this whole discipline of public lands management, but it is done completely without the input of the indigenous historical perspective. And she addressed that actually. So that's interesting because that's very specific to California.
I was on a Zoom recently. It's been a little while, maybe a couple months now. Who's the author of the 14? Is it 1491? What's the book? The Tomb. It's a huge book that a lot of, the Mann. Is it Robert Mann who's the author? Yeah, he was in a dialogue with a scientist, and I listened to them both go on about their projections of the future of land ownership. And they basically said that they believe that large parts of the West will be given back to the Native American people.
Huh.
And they said that's very plausible, like in the next 100 years. Yeah.
When you said that you could give your land back to the Native Americans, I flashed on what I read recently about people. Before slavery was abolished, people would die, and in their will, they would free their slaves.
Yeah.
And somehow I'm making a connection between land and people, but just felt like the same sort of thing.
Yeah, because the land is a relation, it's a relationship, and it's a family member.
Exactly.
And as well, like, I think there's somebody else who's been attending sort of Indigenous peoples talks, but I had a friend who was telling me recently about a climate conference she's been to. And I think there's, the mainstream kind of way of thinking about climate adaptation is sort of like, how do you create markets and different types of products and different kind of materials and different sources of energy within the sort of existing capitalist framework to accommodate this new climate reality, and to sort of try to reverse the emissions of gases that fossil fuels cause. Whereas when I kind of listen to the indigenous approach, and I think we've covered it in some of our readings here, the issue is less sort of, well, let's change our markets to make to be more, to be less, to have less impact on emissions. And let's think a little bit more deeply about our relationship to the land. And so it was a little difficult because I had this friend, and she was like, oh no, don't rain on my party. It was a great conference with all these, cool business green leaders. And she didn't want to hear when I said, well, did you watch the latest Michael Moore movie about some of the materials that are used in solar energy, and that the whole green technology industry is underwritten by the same kinds of corporate finance models that the current, model of markets is. So you have to be, and it actually creates a lot of waste and toxic materials just sitting out in the desert. So this whole drive for, alternative cars and alternative energy kind of sidesteps this larger argument about, wait a minute, like, why do we want just different materials and say that's enough to, deal with this massive human impact on the planet? We should be talking about a completely different way of even living on the planet.
How to change the way we think. It's this ridiculous, this notion that we can just like replace our energy with a different source. It's not, that's not a possibility really. And scientists are all saying about nuclear power, and it's absurd. We haven't even started to think about how we can change our relationship on this planet.
That is the question I think that we address here, and that is the right sort of way of thinking. But in many of the climate conferences, they're busy making a whole other level of capitalism that works, that is basically greenwashing in a way. But if you try to have a discussion about it, you have to really present it as, wait a minute, the paradigm is still this capitalism, and you just want a different sort of set of actors, and you just want to feel better about yourself, frankly, for using a different product, and you feel like, oh, that's all right, now I feel morally okay, and I'm going to save the planet, when in fact you don't want to really confront the fact that you're not really. If you just keep your level of consumption right here and just change the product, no, that doesn't help. Did anyone see that Michael Moore movie? I forget what it's named, The Planet of the Humans or something?
Yeah, I watched part of it, but I didn't watch the end of it. Did anybody else get to see it? I mean, it was hard to find, and it came.
That's right, it disappeared for a while.
Thank you, Ansu. That was helpful.
You're welcome. This is a nice group to kind of delve deeper into those kinds of topics that sometimes people get touchy about, or they don't want to really confront the truth of the topic. So think about it in a non-confrontational way.
I had to put a sign on my refrigerator to remind me to talk about climate because I was so often just choosing not to say anything.
Good night. Stay well, everyone.
Good night.
Yeah, I mean, I think like for me, the podcasts and the video, like there's a whole like parallel narrative that goes with the joy that the human beings that were interviewed expressed on managing the land with fire and burns, that like it's so hard to talk about like how it was completely different way of approaching living in the arid West. Like there's no way to like compromise. Like how the West that we're living in right now, everything would need to go if you were going to give the land back. That would be the only way, but it would, you know, that would be the only way to do controlled burning, would be if you completely gave everything back and decided that this is a dead end street, the way that we are here. And so it's hard to be moderate about that kind of conversation in a lot of the conferences or conversations about climate, because we want to make small interventions in a sinking boat. So acknowledging that the boat is sinking is like it's like a precondition for a like conversation about like anything, because you can't fix this way of being here, especially in the arid West, you know. Every river and stream that flows from the Rockies or the Sierra into the Great Basin is bespoke as part of the power grid, 100%. And like the forests and the management of the forests are entirely thought through with a management strategy that is completely different from controlled fire. So like the entire thing, like it's not like about like LA City Council, or it's, you can talk about that, you can talk about, you know, what Newton Harrison would call a niche in the life web, like a small intervention that facilitates the life web, but to actually acknowledge that isn't going to really work unless it's a big picture thinking. And our best kind of hope, which is where I think Maya took this reading series, is for us to educate ourselves about what was the last thing that actually worked. Not that we can go back to it necessarily, but it was the last thing that was actually working. And to kind of just sort of as a port of entry, educate ourselves about what that was. What did that look like? What did that smell like? When that woman said, "Oh, I love the smell of a burnt forest," right? I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that. Like, oh, that's where you can really smell potential, right? I was like, okay, like that is a really, really different way of thinking. And it really, that was what I came away with tonight, was just like, okay, it is really like completely different, like palette, sensorium about the way the world looked and smelled and tasted and all of it.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Thank you for that. And thank you for facilitating this group where a different kind of imagination and a different kind of reality can be literally met with our eyes wide open, rather than what happens a lot as we're talking about in the climate conferences, where we're still sort of behind that veil, that illusion that it's quite all right what we're doing. And we just don't go back beyond the history of settlement and we say that, you know, that's the reference point. The honesty that it takes to go deep and to confront everything in the past and to say the truth that you just said so eloquently is really where we should start. That's the place where we should get to. And I feel like a lot of the time, the conversation is stuck at another level about little adjustments and stuff. So I really thank you for creating the space for that.
Yeah, I agree. And you summed up for me what my takeaway was from the first video was just this quality of acceptance that was so palpable, and acceptance and willingness to teach and willingness to move on. And I think, Lauren, as you said, like it's this unwillingness to accept that we are, like as Oguri says, we are in the middle of the signal, the light is red and the cars are coming. And until we recognize that, and most people are not willing to recognize it, like you said, the boat's already sinking, it's already sailed, it's gone, we're, until we're willing to recognize it, that we can't get to that level of acceptance that will allow us to make a change.
I know, I don't feel young, and I think that a lot of the time, this level of consideration of topics, they just say, oh, the younger generation are willing to face it and the older generation are not. And I mean, I think that does a disservice to the whole topic. And it's not fair to younger people to say, oh, you're going to fix it all. But B, we need everybody's imagination and skills and way of handling things to confront this uncomfortable history of occupation and what it's done to the rivers and the land and the soil.
And also what it's done to us epigenetically to not confront the trauma of colonization.
What does that mean epigenetically in terms of your psychology, or what do you mean?
Well, it means that what we don't deal with, we pass on in our genes to the next generation. So, in trauma therapy, the idea would be that I come from a Jewish background, so I probably carry trauma from ancestors' persecution, even though I never met them. That there is some basis in science now that trauma's passed on genetically. So that's called epigenetic. So similarly, because there's no collective processing of the trauma exacted by the perpetrators of colonization, we're doomed to attract people like Trump.
Oh my gosh.
And until we start to deal with our own trauma, the trauma of being perpetrators of this, we can't move on. And we're going to just keep attracting brutality towards us because we have to do the work. We have to do that work. And it's hard work because there's no reward for it. So it's not like, inventing something, it's about consciousness. And it's another thing that is, brilliant minds like Dr. Vandana Shiva will talk about. The last colonization that's going on is colonization of our minds. And it's being designed so that we don't do the work of processing anything. So she's pointing, flaring red flags at us to avoid Microsoft. So that's a whole other story, but it all kind of does connect because
yeah,
it's about mental freedom and the processing, taking responsibility for like your sensorium, all the knowledge that your eyes, your brains, your ears, your nose, your mouth is telling you is going on. Like,
yeah, I'm aware of that, what you're talking about, Lauren, because she does talk about how they would sooner replace being human with a smarter algorithm of a perfect decision-making being. And that's decided by somebody, sitting in Silicon Valley, who has a minute fraction of the lived experience and memories and history of the diversity of humankind that there is. It's really pretty horrifying. So yeah.
and this series of conversations began with Dr. Shiva's concept that every revolution begins with the planting of a seed. It's always about the relationship of an individual taking control of their place in the world by being able to grow their own food. And that in India, food growing was connected also to women's work. So women's rights, women's empowerment, women's stories, and revolution are all kind of part of her gestalt, part of her tradition and her thinking. And so the embroidery and learning circles were part of something she and I spoke about semi-publicly on Gandhi's birthday, about his idea of his political system of being truth and power, satyagraha, and how she's taken that into a kind of feminist position. But then we were, strongly sat down and talked to by a lot of people about maybe Gandhi not being a good person to be shining a golden light on, because he himself has a very dubious record that is not perhaps appropriate to be, pointing at right now. But the idea of us sitting together doing needlework and trying to do the hard work of educating ourselves and not letting sentiment, like, it's one thing to say, I really feel like, I feel that this is the right thing, is very different to like meeting once a week and actually listening to people who actually have some knowledge to share, and then really doing the hard work of trying to talk about it and trying not to talk too much about it, and really listen. And, when we finish on Christmas Day, it'll be 24 weeks of reading and embroidery, 24 weeks of 12 of them being about abolitionist reading, and 12 weeks about Fires of the West. And that's nothing. It's just nothing, but it's been a commitment that I think, has been about acknowledging that it's important for each and every one of us to make time and space to educate ourselves. And again, there's no rewards for that out there. Maybe one friend will say, "What are you reading?" They don't really want to talk about it.
Well, I think you'd have been inspired to hear what Candy White said about, and she, at least we're sitting here talking about it in a group. She said, "I dreamed this thing up. I dreamed this world into being, about a land back, about re-empowering the Indigenous relationship to the land." So we're doing at least a conversation. It's all good. And the work we do here of just sharing and imagining and creating is actually groundbreaking work, because it has a ripple. I don't know exactly tangibly that, you know, it does, but I feel it. I mean, I feel it in myself, the transformation. I feel the validation of these thoughts. And I think that itself is powerful.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, I'd love to add to that. Thanks for articulating that. Also, resonated with me in this space every week at the same time and making us kind of ritual of it and sharing it with you guys. Grounding. This segment on fire is just so special because I can't think of other spaces where we allow for consciousness raising and awareness around something that affects our land and our earth and our lives so much. But I don't know, it really creates a space of intention to try and confront this question of fire. And I'm just so appreciative of that. It's very, very unique and inspiring. And, you know, since my hometown burned this year in Oregon, I feel like that activation that happens in activism where you feel like I have to act, I have to try and help other people so that this doesn't happen to them, or so that it happens differently, or so this doesn't happen to the animals, you know. And this reading group has been a real space to like focus that nervous energy into something actually productive and positive. So I'm super grateful.
Ansu, thank you for that question. Ansu gave me a private question because but I actually didn't mean to connect those two ideas. But when you push, but it's a wonderful challenge. But when you push return, that they both came out plop plop on top of each other. But yeah, it would be nice to learn more. You know, certainly the wisdom, the respect for wisdom in Native American cultures is just something that we don't have in our, it's just gets more and more diluted, I think, with the various different approaches to age in America. And you know, it's certainly something that's really strong in the Japanese culture. It's really strong in Native American culture. You know, I think I don't know about Judaism, but I just know that there's more of a punitive approach to how, you know, respect your elders kind of thing. But definitely, I think that these the values are something that are passed on.
I mean, I had this saying that I think it was from Einstein. I don't know if it was Einstein, but I read it somewhere from Einstein. So I wrote it and put it on my office for years. And it was, science is organized knowledge, wisdom is organized life, or something to that effect. But you're right, in our culture, we value and give so much, you know, value and emphasis to a certain kind of intelligence, as if it's like, disembodied from everything else, and it's just expressed in a certain way. Whereas the concept that Dr. Vandana Shiva, I've heard her exactly say that knowledge in the Indian tradition is called discernment. The word translates more as discernment, which is linked more to wisdom, to knowing the right way to live, the right relationship, there's a concept of morality tied into it. It's not amoral.
I like the way you were ambivalent about attributing that statement to Einstein. So much gets attributed to Einstein just in order to give it power. It's very funny.
Could be.
Well, I would definitely stay here and continue this conversation, but I'm shirking my responsibilities to set the table. So really beautiful to be with you all. Thank you for the gorgeous. Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
We'll see you next week.
Jen, what's next week? Do you know?
Let me see if I can find it. Let's see. Next week is a video of Newton Harrison reciting Living Forest, a whole systems approach.
Oh. Well, maybe I'm talking to Newton on Sunday. I didn't know that. Maybe I'll see if he'll come.
That'd be wonderful. And then there's a reading as well. I'm not familiar. It's what Western states can learn from Native American wildfire management strategies. Let's see if that. Okay, so the second one is an article. And it looks like it does have a video in there as well.
Can you see a picture? Lauren?
Hold on. Oh, yeah.
That's Amy. She really loved Newton.
Oh.
They had a special relationship.
Oh, I'll let him know. He'll be so sad.
Yeah, I don't know that he knows. I haven't reached out to him.
I'll let him know. I speak to him every Sunday, so I'll let him know. How did she pass? What happened?
She had ovarian cancer, and she fought it for 2.5 years, and she caught it pretty quickly, but it was very aggressive, and she had a pap smear, and then in like month 8 after the pap smear, she started having pain, so she went in, and there was a big tumor, so it grew fast. She was a swimmer, so she was in chlorinated pools a lot throughout her life, and then also she was doing hormone therapy. She's 4 years older than me. I just turned 60, so she's 64. And yeah, and she upped her dosage. She was doing these patches and she didn't talk to her doctor. And I think that that probably had something to do with it too, but she was in the middle of a divorce. So when, you know, I think, yeah, her husband left her Thanksgiving, and then by May, that's when she was diagnosed. So she was trying to grapple with, yeah, a 23-year marriage, you know, ending and then fighting cancer at the same time. So, you know, I don't know. I've not read any studies on like the longest somebody's lived with ovarian cancer, but it's definitely something that doesn't go away. You know, you might make it go away for a while, but it'll come back. It's going to come back. And it's not a cancer that's common, you know, and that's something about women's healthcare that, you know, older women have to really be proactive about. So if you are in tune with your body and you feel something, you need to go to a scanning center and you need to get a vaginal ultrasound. And it doesn't cost very much money, but you have to find a doctor who will sign off on that. You know, I found a place here locally last summer that I was, you know, kind of maybe taking on some of Amy's stuff by, you know, I had some pains going on, but I think I had some blood stuff going on up here at 7,000 elevation that was causing me some issues. But so I had it. It's easy, you know, and yeah, proactive. The doctors aren't gonna, you can't, you know, by the time they find it, it's usually too late. But it is rare.
Yeah, I lost my best friend to ovarian cancer when she was in her early 50s. And, you know, she had it for 7 years. And
Wow.
when they found it, they gave her less than a year to live.
Yeah.
And
what'd she do? Treatment.
she did a lot of treatment. Chemo really helped her a lot. I think, you know, she was a really incredible artist, and I think that keeping it kept her alive. She had different shows that she really wanted to do, and she was raising twin daughters, and who were little.
Oh, wow.
They were 11 when she was diagnosed.
Oh boy, yeah.
And they were 18 when she died.
Hmm.
But it was tough. She had to fight every
She really
step.
fought, yeah.
She had to fight every step of the way. She had to ask.
Yeah, Amy didn't fight.
Every procedure that they wanted to do, she had to be her own advocate for or against. She got fired by certain doctors for
having opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Amy didn't do that. She caved and she didn't want to learn anything about it. She didn't want to read about it. She just went and trusted her doctor. And I'm just like, that was hard for me because I'm like your friend, you know, I've been kicked out of a doctor's office before from asking questions, you know, they're like, get out of here.
Literally got fired from at least 2 doctors. They were just, I mean, they were nice about it, but they weren't, they were not supportive of her being an advocate in her own.
That's crazy. That's just crazy.
You know, she had the best treatment she could have had. She lived in London, and it was free.
What year was that?
Well, this April, it'll be 5 years since she died. So
Well, I think medicine and how doctors interact with patients is changing quickly.
Yeah.
I have a lot of hope for treatments for everything. I think because of the pandemic, I think you know, I think we're really reassessing treatments, you know, and I hate to admit it, but you know, like Trump, he is an anti-vaxxer, you know that, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but he's also very about alternative medicines. And so, you know, this treatments that he got that, I mean, if he really had it, it went away really quick. Like he had it for a week, right? So I don't know. I just, you know, I think I forget, maybe like a decade ago, I hurt my finger and I did some research and I found out that they can do these injections of blood into muscle tissue to help heal it. And I was like, what else are these like simple procedures that we could be doing that we're not doing, you know, like things that are just kind of maintenance, you know, that.
You mean like masking?
Well, I don't know. I mean, unless you need surgery, you know, obviously that's necessary, but there's a lot of things that we will do surgery on that you maybe don't even need surgery. You know, I think
I mean, one of the things that I think is super interesting is that they're now telling women after they give birth to save their placentas because they're medically freezing the placenta for your personal lifelong healthcare. So basically the medical science is saying that the future of medical science is that you're born with every medicine that you're ever going to need in your own placenta.
Dang, mine's gone. That's not gonna happen again.
And now people who are giving birth in the US are being asked if they would like to have the baby's placenta frozen. So basically,
I think that's smart.
Medical care will be individual and you'll be able to know from birth what your genetic,
your DNA,
well, also what you're likely to get in your life. Like
Well, they can already do that. You can get tests for that now. I haven't done that one.
Then you
Actually,
can start to plan.
My DNA test that I did had some medical stuff in it. It didn't go into detail, but it talked about my heart and something else. I went to a private company, not that 23andMe. But yeah, we've you know, capitalism has stopped us from innovating, you know, in a weird way. Like it created innovation, but then, you know, greed just took over and they didn't want to, you know, we built these factories and you have to get your money out of them, you know, like to build whatever, cars or machines or widgets, you know, like, so you can't change track after you've already built a factory to build that widget because you need to get your money back out of it. And then you get greedy. And so it's sad that, you know, we have so much knowledge that we could be so much more innovative, you know, than we are.
It's more integrated. When I had my first baby in 1990, every doctor was white and male.
Yeah.
And 4 years later, I think I had the same experience, but then another 4 years later, I had a female OBGYN and a Black male pediatrician. And I went, oh, this is quite different from the last two babies.
I've been thinking a lot about that too, because I've had a lot of health issues in the last few months for different things with my body. And it's been amazing. Every single doctor I've seen has been female. And I've had choices in every single specialized field of different women. So I could look up each person. And I was having a lot of gratitude for that because just like you said, Sylvia, I know in years past, that was not the case. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing now that we have this growth happening.
Yeah, I have a lot of hope for medical care in the future for sure. I mean, look at, when I looked at my ancestry, I thought, how did all these people live into their 90s, you know, in the 1700s, in the 1800s, you know, like 92, 97. I mean, that some of that is genetics, but you also, you know, it's survival. And, you know, if you live in cities versus rural areas, you know, what kind of water you're drinking, all those things alter your DNA over time.
So the people that lived a long time, were they living in a city or were they living in a rural situation?
Mine are all rural people.
I was going to guess that. That sounds much healthier.
Yeah. Yeah, I have an aunt who died just 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago at 98. And when we would go visit her at her house, my son and I, we'd drink a bunch of her water. I started bringing bottles because she lived on this mountainous little, it wasn't a huge mountain, but just a hill in the Ozarks. And her water was so good. I'm like a water connoisseur. And yeah, I was like, Aunt LaFawn, can I have some of your tap water? I'm gonna have a bottle with me. She'd be like, sure. But she got to finally, she had a fall and her family had to take her to a assisted living at 98. And she only lasted there like under a year. But when she got there, they were like, what medicines are you on? And she's like, I don't take medicine. And they're like, how can you be alive? Like they didn't get, like she was alive at 98 without taking any medicine, And they started putting her on medicines and she got worse, like she had all sorts of, water collecting in her ankles and she didn't look good. And I thought, oh, she's going to die. And then one day we went back and I noticed she looked a lot better. And I think she was like hiding her pills or not taking them or like in prison. Yeah, don't put me in an assisted living home, please.
My grandfather lived to 98 and I took him to the hospital for something and he walked in, but after a few days there, they wheeled him out. So I always think about that he was perfectly capable of walking in, but he wasn't capable of walking.
Well, yeah, the mind and the heart, For some people that's death to, have to be in that kind of a situation. And, also home hospice, Amy, this is the sad part, Lauren, is she died in Calvary Hospital, which is a big hospice hospital in the Bronx. And, the hospital is only letting people have visitation for 4 hours a day. So she died in the night by herself. And I just find that really sad, all these people passing by themselves right now. But she was buried in a natural burial ground at it's at upstate New York. It's Sleepy Hollow. I don't know if you've ever been to that cemetery. It's really beautiful. So they have a section that's all natural burial there. And I don't know if you've ever been to one, but Jo Hansen, do you know who she is? She was one of the early, she was kind of like the Merrill Euclides of San Francisco. She started the Recology program. Yeah, so when she passed, her family wrapped her in muslin, they put her on ice and we took her in an old Cadillac. And I remember the ice was like flowing out the back as we were driving to Olema. But we laid her to rest. The hole in the ground was really deep. And we dropped her in and we put flowers on and sang some songs and then we all buried her. And that night, I had this dream. She was just flying all over the place. And I was like, oh my God, she's free like a bird, like she wasn't trapped in some casket and put in cement somewhere,
My friend is buried in Joshua Tree.
Yeah.
In a natural burial area with.
Yeah, I know where that's at. I lived in Joshua Tree for about a year last year, and I know where that's at because I looked into it. Yeah. Maybe there'll be more of that. I mean, it's such a waste of material, It's really unnecessary. And you can buy felt caskets now or wicker.
Maybe that's what we should do with that willow. Willow from MacArthur Park. We could have a casket manufacturing business. That ought to go over great.
The Amish make them in the Midwest.
It can be fitted. Deliver.
Well, there's an artist who works with mushrooms and she made, you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
She's out of Boston and she basically makes a suit that you put on that has mushrooms in it and it will take over your body. And she she did the whole process. There's a video online. I don't know if I can find it right away, but she found someone who was dying of cancer who was willing to do the whole thing, and they found a place that would bury him with that. And I don't know if there was any follow-up. I mean, you're not going to dig him out of the ground, but it, yeah, he was game for it.
This was a wild conversation. So I freaked out my daughter, who was born in 1990, recently. So she's 30. I said something about having a little bit of fungus under one of my fingernails. And she's like, oh, that's too bad. I was like, yeah, well, I'm already inoculated for decomposition after death. And she goes, that was really dark, but kind of interesting. I didn't know what to do with that.
Well, I'm gonna,
yeah, okay.
I've got to go cook dinner.
Oh.
I'll go make mushrooms.
Mushroom stroganoff, huh?
Yeah. Thank you guys. I'm going to sign off, but I look forward to seeing you next week. And Patricia, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I totally know how that feels. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry that Amy had such a, even though I didn't know her, I'm so sorry that she had that end of her life. That sounds really, the whole thing sounds really traumatic.
Yeah, it didn't end well, and it didn't, give us space to finish up some projects that we wanted to do, and so that was hard for me. I was feeling a little resentful at the end, like, why couldn't you hold on a little longer, and all those things. But well, thank you, and it's good to be here and
talk
and get back to my bee.
All right, good night, you guys.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Everybody, see you next week.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.